So in this portion of the course, we have been talking about getting to know an unbeliever, understanding their worldview, understanding the ins and outs, the intricacies of that worldview, being able to pick apart that worldview, using our PEP cartoon, pre-evangelism principle cartoon, getting to know an unbeliever through questions, examining that worldview, understanding it so that you can evaluate that worldview and show how their worldview is stupid and inadequate and inconsistent and contradictory, so that they'll hopefully abandon that worldview and understand the gospel message as you're able to say it. It goes without saying, I think, that you're going to need to understand the gospel message before you can explain it. And this time when you're taking classes here at Ethnos 360 Bible Institute is going to be a further clarifying of that gospel for you. Further understanding of why Christ's death, burial, and resurrection was needed, why it was adequate, enough for salvation, what it does for a person, what they need to do in response, etc., etc. Your understanding of that isn't going to begin here. It's not going to end here. It's going to be a lifelong process for all of us. But we're going to need to know what that gospel message is so that we can show someone, hey, your worldview doesn't really work, but here's a worldview that does. Christ's death, burial, resurrection, and then this whole host of worldview after that biblical gospel message. It doesn't matter how much you know about another person's belief. You need to be able to explain the gospel to them so that they can actually get saved. So in talking about evaluating worldview and inconsistencies, and then today we're going to talk about the treasure of the heart also, we talked about inconsistencies a number of sessions ago, and it's about looking at worldview and trying to figure out why that worldview is in error. We're using the knowledge of an unbeliever's worldview as a tool to show us what needs to be explained and how to explain the gospel to them, and as a tool to show them that they need something beyond their own explanation. Showing someone, pointing out to someone the inadequacies and tension and worldview contradictions inherent in their worldview may be a door, an avenue down which God will show them their need for the gospel. There's a number of ways that God does this. We'll talk about this, I think, towards the end of the course, about how God the Holy Spirit shows people their need for the gospel message. But this might be one of those ways. You deconstructing their worldview. You being able to show how the worldview has error in it, inadequacy, tension, contradiction, inconsistency. You need to be able to show how someone's worldview doesn't really work, that it is inadequate and untrue. But in order for you to show them that, you need to see those things yourself. You need to be able to use the tests of adequacy and show someone their worldview is inadequate. I wish that in contradictions and inconsistencies were like silver bullets. You fire this at someone, you point this out to someone, and they realize their worldview is silly, and they fall on their knees like the Philippian jailer and say, "What must I do to be saved?" I wish that was the case. It's not going to be like that. Contradictions, I think of, are like hallways down which there may be an avenue to share truth. On this PEP cartoon, I pictured the unbeliever's worldview as a three-dimensional box. And the believer's worldview is a three-dimensional box as well. And on this one, evaluating worldview, I picture doorways. And I picture these contradictions, these inconsistencies, these tests of adequacy as being doors that we can open in that worldview and examine. I open this door. Do I see any cracks in the ceiling? Do I see that the ceiling is coming down? Do I see big problems in there? Well, I need to point these out so they can realize that their box, their worldview, doesn't really work. So I'm using the knowledge of an unbeliever's worldview as a tool to show them they may need something beyond what they already have. However, the unbeliever might not see what you point out as being an inconsistency, a contradiction, tension. They might just need to clarify a little bit more for you. You might not quite understand. The unbeliever might decide to fire back at you their perceived contradictions of Christianity. Because it's natural when we get attacked to attack back. That's a natural response we have. So not all of these inconsistencies are things that they're going to make people fall on their knees and say, "What must I do to be saved?" Some of these things may not necessarily even be inconsistencies or contradictions, but they still might be fruitful for discussion. It still might be good to discuss this worldview and what people are actually believing. Our goal in pointing these things out to people is not to win an argument by showing how stupid someone else's worldview is, But our goal with using the tools of adequacy and evaluating worldviews to point out to someone how false their worldview is so they'll question it or abandon it, and then we can share the gospel with them. We don't necessarily need to be picky, nitpicky with them, but looking for those opportunities to share truth with them. Not necessarily pointing out and questioning everything we see, but looking for those soft spots in their defense. So a number of times ago, when we talked about adequacy and the tests of adequacy, I gave you a definition for adequacy. I've got it up on the board again here. When one considers the data within the four components of an individual worldview, reality, man, values, and purpose, is the relevant data explainable? Is it consistent? Is it livable? I said there are three tests of adequacy. There's internal, external, and personal consistency. So running through these again really quickly, internal consistency. Are component ideas rationally interconnected? Does the worldview contradict itself? Is it adequate within itself? Can you say, I believe in A, whatever A is, and say, I don't believe in A, or A is not true in the same breath? Well, you're being contradictory then. Your worldview is inadequate if you say that's how you view the world around you. Internal consistency. How about external consistency? Is the worldview compared with some kind of an external authority? Do component ideas, reality, man, values, and purpose, conform to well-established bodies of knowledge outside the worldview? Is the worldview adequate outside of itself? You believe something inside of yourself, and yet a well-established body out there says, well, that's not true. You shouldn't believe that you shouldn't continue to believe that idea. The personal consistency here. Personal consistency is component ideas taken to their logical conclusions are acceptable to the individual holding the worldview. Can you adequately live this worldview out? Is it fruitful for you living a good life? However you define good life. Inconsistencies, contradictions, inadequacies, discrepancies, worldview tension. So these inconsistencies, these inadequacies, this worldview tension is going to be most effective if you can find the treasure of the heart. That's a phrase I got from Os Guinness. The treasure of the heart, that area that someone holds dear, someone thinks important, and showing them how their beliefs trash that thing that they treasure the most. The treasure of the heart is that thing that I treasure in my heart, but that when I look at the reality, man, values, and purpose, that my worldview, I can realize that my worldview does bad things that I treasure the most in my heart. Hopefully they'll be able to recognize those beliefs are garbage and abandon those beliefs. That's what this third one here, revealing need. Hopefully I'm able to reveal need in an area that really matters to my unsaved friends, so that they'll start questioning that worldview, even outright abandon that worldview. Joseph Aldrich says this about this idea, this concept. The goal is to discover that point in his life at which the gospel will become good news, and then to proclaim it. The gospel is good news. Literally it means good news. It's good news that Jesus Christ died on the cross to pay for your sin. That's great news. But if we don't see that there's bad news there, then we're not going to see the incredibly good of this good news. And so we need to maybe point out to someone, hey, your worldview, your beliefs really are bad news. They don't describe reality as it really is. And they do bad things, those things you care about the most. People are easy to say, hey, I don't see why your belief applies to me. It's good for you, but it's not good for me. I don't like your belief. Well, we need to show people how their beliefs are really not acceptable to them, and they need something else. I've got a few examples of this. Someone that says, oh, I believe abortion's okay if the mother doesn't want the baby. It's not right for me, but I believe everyone should be able to choose for themselves. Well, what if it was your wife or your girlfriend that was aborting your child? What if it's your daughter that was aborting your grandchild? Would it matter to you a little bit more? Would you still think that everyone should choose for themselves? Well, maybe not. Maybe you'd realize, well, that belief is silly. When I take it out of the theoretical so far away and I bring it right in front of my face and smear it around my face, and I realize that belief is garbage. Hopefully that might be a treasure of the heart. A coworker who believes that right and wrong is determined by majority opinion in a society. Well, maybe you bring up the classic example of Nazi Germany. Majority opinion decided it's okay to kill Jews, to hunt down and kill Jews. And maybe in a weirdly consistent way, they said, yes, for that culture, for that time, it was okay for them to do. Maybe they're consistent. Well, maybe that's a dead end there. Well, maybe it's not also. Can you say, okay, you believe it's okay for that culture. So here we are in America in 2020, and we decide that it's okay for us to kill the Irish people. And you're Irish, right? Is that an okay thing for our culture to decide? Well, they might be thinking, well, that's a stupid belief. It absolutely is, but it shows the stupidity of that kind of thinking. You might say, oh, we're never gonna decide that. Yeah, we're not gonna because it's a stupid belief. However, you're saying it's legitimate. We can't judge another culture that decides something for themselves. And if we decide to kill all the Irish, well, that's okay for us to be doing. That's what your belief system is saying. It's a silly belief. Your coworker might try to say that we can't judge another's culture. We can't look at another culture and say that something they do is wrong. Well, bring it down to something that they know is wrong and show them that that belief that there's no right and wrong transculturally is a silly belief. Imagine talking to a homosexual coworker, really values his homosexuality. And you say, well, I know this tribe in South America. Then once they find one of their tribal members is gay, they bury him up to his neck and they let him die. Is that an okay thing to do? Well, someone who values their homosexuality and realizes, oh, no, we should be able to be gay, and that's a great thing. He's going to say, well, no, that's wrong for that tribe. They shouldn't be doing that kind of a thing. What I'm trying to do in this illustration is show them, hey, there's some things that are right and wrong, and it's okay to look at certain cultures and say, that's a wrong thing or that's a right thing. It's not just open to everyone's individual belief. And I'm trying to show the treasure of the heart. You value your homosexuality. You think that's a valuable thing. And I'm trying to show you there's certain things that we can say are right and wrong in other cultures as well. You've said that man is just an animal, but also that he is valuable. Well, if man is just an animal, why is he more valuable than any other animal? Why would it be wrong for Nazi Germany, for example, to hunt down and kill 6 million unwanted animals, vermin, to use their terms? Why would that be a wrong thing to do? Or to change it into 6 million unwanted Irish vermin? Who knows? Why would that be a wrong thing to do? In that worldview, it wouldn't be a wrong thing to be doing. Let me read you something from Ravi Zacharias, Deliver Us from Evil. He's writing on page 181. At a recent meeting I was addressing in Hong Kong, a businessman stood up and proposed that all values were just contrived and had no bearing on ultimate reality. After I answered his question, I invited him to come and have a personal talk on the subject. He took me up on the offer, and with a crowd of people straining their necks to listen in on the conversation, I said to him that by inference, one could assume that he denied that any act was intrinsically evil. That's a correct inference, he said. Hardly believing the hole he had dug for himself, I asked him the obvious. Suppose I were to take a newborn baby, bring it to this platform, and proceed with a sharp sword to mutilate that child. Are you saying to me there's nothing actually wrong or evil in that deed? To the stunned expressions of those listening in, he shrugged and shifted and then said, I may not like it, but I cannot call it morally wrong. There was only one thing left to say, how incongruous it is, even by your own philosophy, that while denying the fact of evil, you were unable to completely shake off the feeling. For even you, sir, said you would not like it. An understatement, I hope. The conversation suddenly took a dramatic turn on how one can know ultimate reality, because he had mangled his own. That guy was trying to be consistent with his beliefs, and Ravi was trying to find the treasure of the heart. Do you really think it'd be okay to do this sick and disgusting thing? Well, I can't really call it a wrong thing. Goodness gracious. Something's wrong with your belief system, buddy. Something's wrong with your worldview. You can't say that things that are obviously wrong, that everybody knows are wrong. You can't call that a wrong thing, huh? Something's wrong there. Imagine going to the funeral of a coworker's son, a coworker who is hardcore believing in evolution. And you go and you want to be a comfort to him. And so you go, you drape your arm around his shoulder and says, get over it. He was just a pile of dirt. Oh, stand back because you're going to get yelled at or slugged. Because he doesn't probably just think, according to his evolutionary beliefs, that his son was just a pile of dirt. However cleverly arranged, chemicals and dirt. No, he probably values the fact that his son was special and unique, and he loved him and had a special relationship with him. And if you start calling him, according to his belief system, just a pile of dirt, be careful. Talk with gentleness and respect, not all guns blazing in a situation like that. But you're pointing out the treasure of the heart. Your belief says this about that son that you care about. Do you really believe that kind of a thing? Hopefully it's going to cause them to question their beliefs and doubt their beliefs. You think that nothing is either right or wrong. Would it be okay for me and a few friends to go over and beat your mother to death with baseball bats? Okay, that's graphic and disgusting, like Ravi Zacharias' illustration with that guy in Hong Kong. But it shows the stupidity of that belief. Maybe we need that shock value to shock people out of the stupidity of their beliefs. It's okay to hold those things theoretically, but when they come right in front of us, we have to realize, man, that's maybe a dumb belief. Maybe I shouldn't be believing that. Absolutely. Or if you decide to be consistent with, yeah, it's okay for you to beat my mom with baseball bats. Illegal, you could call it that, but you could not call it wrong. And maybe if that situation did happen and I went before the judge and the judge said, well, that was an illegal thing. I can't call it wrong, though. It was fine. Oh, my goodness, you'd be ticked because you value something special about your mom. You value that it's not right to beat people with baseball bats. And there's an inadequacy in your worldview system. You're not being consistent with your worldview system. You may say to someone, hey, you say that man is just a highly developed animal that came about through evolution. Does that mean there's nothing more to you than a bunch of chemicals and dirt? Well, they might say, yeah, you're right. Or they might say, well, no, I know I'm something more than that. I've got creativity, I've got imagination, I've got dreams and hopes and fears, I've got a purpose. There's something more to me than just chemicals and dirt. Again, however cleverly arranged. If they hold in themselves the tension between I'm just evolution, just physical, but there's something special about me, that's tension. And if you can find the treasure of the heart where those ideas can't live together, well, you might have found an error in their armor. Francis Schaeffer tells about the time he's on a ship. He's talking to a young man who believes that people are just the physical. There's just the dirt and there's chemicals, and was really firmly believing this. Francis Schaeffer asks him at the end of the conversation, so when you go into your room at night, you hold your wife in your arms, that it's nothing more than chemicals, right? And the young man responded with, I know that is true according to my belief system, but it shakes me up. And he was ticked off about the situation. He realized he was wrong in his beliefs. Francis Schaeffer found the treasure of the heart of that guy. He treasured in his heart the specialness of his relationship and his love for his wife. But that didn't fly. It wasn't consistent with his belief system that said, there's nothing called love. All it is lust. So the treasure of the heart, that area that someone holds dear, someone thinks important, and showing them how their beliefs trash that thing that they treasure the most. We want to be able to take someone's theoretical beliefs and let them leave the theoretical realm and affect those things that they love, that they count on as being valuable in their lives. Suddenly those beliefs will leave the theoretical realm and become practical, and people will maybe abandon that belief or start questioning it. However, it's become more and more easy in our culture to say whatever. Oh, whatever. You believe what you believe, I'll believe what I'll believe, and we'll all be fine. Well, no, we won't, because your beliefs are dumb. Your beliefs are wrong. Your beliefs don't line up with reality, and your beliefs are leading you to hell. So it's not you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe, and we'll all be fine. No, we won't. We need to point out someone how they believe in error and falsehood to the point where they're willing to examine that and abandon that. I think of the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4, who's very similar to this. She's talking with the way, the truth, and the life right in front of her, and she goes down a bunch of different rabbit trails and has this religious conversation with this Jewish rabbi. At one point in the conversation, she says, our father said to worship on this mountain. You Jews say to worship in Jerusalem. Who knows? It's like she's saying, whatever. Who knows where we're supposed to worship? But then Jesus says, this is the answer. This is the answer. She's as if trying to throw up a smoke screen because his conviction got a little bit too close. Hey, call your husband. Let's talk to him. Well, I don't have a husband. That's right. Our father said to worship on this mountain. You Jews say to worship on Jerusalem. Who knows? She later on says, I know when Messiah comes, he'll tell us. And it's as if she's doing the same thing. Whatever. Until Messiah comes, no one really can know. There's no way to know the truth. So whatever you believe, whatever I believe, we'll all be fine. And then Jesus says, I'm the Messiah. So you need to believe what I say. I love that story. But we do the same thing. And we say, whatever, you believe what you believe, I'll believe what I'll believe. And we do the same thing that the woman at the well did. Sometimes it's honest. Sometimes it's just throwing up smoke screens to deflect the conviction of God's truth getting close to us. But we need to be able to show people like the woman at the well, people like our coworkers, our family members. We need to show people believing false worldviews, and we need to confront that falseness of our own worldview. We need to show that this falseness does affect us. We need to take those things that are far removed and theoretical and bring those closer to us and to realize, hey, that false idea affects me deeply, because it trashes that thing that I treasure in my heart. Certain things we don't care about knowing correctly. We're willing to say, whatever, I don't care, it's not that big a deal, it doesn't affect me. But there's certain things that I have a need to know, correctly. Those are the things that I treasure in my heart. And if we can find those things, those inconsistencies that affect that tension, that inadequacy that affects that treasure of the heart, then we found a problem with their armor, their defense against Christianity. What happens when someone is consistent with their belief of, well, everyone decides right and wrong for themselves? Well, where do we go from there? Well, that's not the treasure of the heart then. What happens when someone is consistent with anything that we try to bring out as an inconsistency? Well, that's not the treasure of the heart. We need to search, pray for something else. To look for something else, to be able to explain to someone that their worldview, their beliefs truly are false. But really an answer to that, if someone is consistent with this belief that everyone decides right and wrong for themselves, is that really even livable in a larger scale? You might decide that for yourself. But if all of society decided to do that, there's no way that can be lived out. We might be able to use that as an avenue. So anyway, the treasure of the heart, that area that someone holds dear, someone thinks important, showing them how their beliefs trash that thing that they treasure the most. I'm looking for that inconsistency, that worldview tension, that inadequacy that affects those things that people treasure in their heart. I'm not looking to win an argument with someone. I'm looking to win their soul. So I need to very much be approaching these things with gentleness and respect, as 1 Peter 3:15 says, as 2 Timothy chapter 2 says. Gentleness and respect, since I'm trying to win their soul. I need to be probing with truth, presenting opportunities as I see them, praying for insights into what those treasures of the heart are. And relationship then is going to be super important in this situation too. I need to evaluate that worldview with love so that they realize, hey, there's love behind this whole pointing out to me that my worldview is in error. The only worldview or belief system that these things that people hold valuable actually measures up in is Christianity, is the Bible, is what God says. All the other worldviews out there are going to fall apart because they're all in error. Again, if you're living in God's world saying it is other than what God says, you're living in error and your worldview is going to fall apart. Christianity is the one that's going to be out there that's going to have a coherent answer for all those questions that we have as humans. It's too easy for us to be able to just change isms, to change, pantheism didn't work for me. Maybe I'll try naturalism. Maybe I'll try animism. Maybe I'll try postmodern, whatever it is. It's too easy to change isms. So we need to not only be able to communicate, hey, your worldview's in error, but also communicate, but this is the worldview that is the truth. And so, evaluating worldview with a point of hoping to get to the point where I can show, hey, this is the gospel message that makes sense of everything. And this is the one that's for you also. So we'll spend some time understanding that a little bit more next time. Thanks for coming today.